Good morning, everybody. Bon matin tout le monde. Je m'appelle Jamie West. Je suis le député provincial de Sudbury. Je m'excuse. Je suis le candidat au NDP, au MPD for the citizenship of Sudbury. That was a reflex motion. My name is Jamie West. I'm the provincial Ontario NDP candidate for the riding of Sudbury. Up till last week on Wednesday, I was the MPP, so I apologize for the errors. Let's start in a good way. Let's start with a land recognition. Let's first recognize how beautiful a day it is, and the land we're gathered on in the riding of Sudbury is the traditional territory of the Tikmishing and Anishinaabeg people. This is the treaty, the 1815 Treaty of Robinson-Huron. I think it's important for all of us, especially settlers such as myself, to recognize that we all have a role to play in our treaties. I'm here with my friends, my colleagues. I have Mike Mantha from Algoma Manitoulin. I have Franz Jelena from Nipissing. Franz Jelena from Nickelbelt. And I'm joined as well by Erica Lahi from Nipissing. As well with us is Jessica Montgomery, the president of the Sudbury District Labour Council. And Patricia Streve and Mia, right? And Mia, who are also with the Labour Council. That's you, yes. That's you. I'm very excited to be here today with all of my colleagues. I'm very excited about what we're here to talk about, and the energy in when I'm out canvassing is just palpable. When I'm knocking on doors, people are waving me down or stopping their cars to talk to me. They're talking about when we walked with education workers on picket lines. They're talking about when we called for an opioid emergency to help with the overdose in the north. They're excited about the fight that the Ontario NDP and the NDP were the only parties to fight for Laurentian University as they're going through the CCAA process. And all of that is leadership that has been developed by our leader. And I'm going to introduce our leader in a moment. She's someone who's strong and ready and working for us. She's someone who understands the North, who's visited the North on a regular basis, unlike the other leaders, who is constantly in the North listening to us and fighting for us. I want to introduce everybody the next Premier of Ontario, Andrea Horwath.
Jamie, thank you. Thanks very much, Jamie. We're here, I'm here to tell Northerners that they can have hope. Hope that with an NDP government, you'll be able to have the things that matter most to you addressed. Life needs to be more affordable in the North. We need to fix the things that are broken, like our healthcare system. We need to provide hope that the North can have a strong future. That's what New Democrats know we can do as government, and that's what we're here to talk about today, our commitment to Northerners. First, though, I do want to mention that we know that there are some Northerners who are having a really tough time now, particularly in Saskatchewan and Fort Albany. Our hearts go out to the communities, to the children and the women and the elders who are being evacuated. And I also want to thank those communities that are receiving those evacuees. It's really an awful thing to have to do, to leave your home to avoid the flooding, but the communities always step up to help out. So places like Kapuskasing, like Thunder Bay, like Timmins, like Cochrane, I just want to say thanks so much for opening your arms again to folks who need your help. I really appreciate it. And I think we all do. I think we all appreciate that. I want to start by saying that my commitment to fix the things that have been broken in Northern Ontario, to address the things that Northerners have been telling me are their concerns for a very long time, will never waver. My commitment to address them has never wavered, and we're here to launch our Northern platform to let you know that those things are important to us because we know they're important to you. They're our priorities because we know that they're your priorities. So that includes things like making sure that we tackle the crisis of opioids, which is one of the things that Jamie already mentioned, by bringing more services, more rehab, more detox beds to these communities. And I just want to say Jamie's done a lot of work with community. I think about those crosses, the memorial to those people who have lost their lives to an overdose. It's just heartbreaking to see the tragedies that that communities here in Sudbury, but also around the north, have been facing. But we also have a highway medicine problem here. We have a highway healthcare problem in the north because governments have ignored the healthcare needs of Northerners. You know, you have not gotten your fair share on so many fronts. And we're here to say you can get your fair share with a government that pays attention to your needs. So tackling that hallway, or rather that highway medicine, that highway healthcare, by making sure we're bringing hundreds of doctors and specialists and other healthcare workers to the north, making sure that we are dealing with the broken Northern Travel Grant. I don't know how many times since the day I became leader I've heard about the complaints and concerns of Northerners around the Northern Travel Grant. We have a guarantee in our platform that you'll have your reimbursements within 14 days of filing them, and you'll be talking to people who understand the North when you get onto those phones to deal with your claims. We also have some real concerns around ensuring that the economy in the north is thriving. So we're going to bring good jobs. We're going to make sure that that the minerals and the grains and everything that's taken from the ground or taken from the earth here in the north has an opportunity to be processed in the north, and that folks will be able to have good jobs. Why? Because first of all, life's getting very, very unaffordable, and people deserve good jobs that pay the bills. But we also know young people need to see some opportunity. They need to see some economic opportunity so they can stay in the north and raise their next generations of their families here as well. So that's a huge issue for us. We also really have some shared concerns with you around transit and transportation, particularly, of course, the Northlander, something that we've all been fighting for, that we were so upset with, as you were, when the Liberals cancelled the Northlander. For years and years we've had a plan to bring that Northlander back, but of course 4 years after the government that we've just had making that promise, the Northlander is still not here. We will fix that. We'll make sure we bring the Northlander back so that we can have what folks need in terms of access to transit, particularly for the passenger rail. The fact of the matter is the North has been ignored for far too long. We need to step up and fix the things that matter most to you. And we need to do that while respecting and paying attention to Francophone communities and ensuring that their unique situations are addressed and their needs are met, as well as ensuring that we have the rights of Indigenous folks always at the top of our minds. The good news is these things can be done with a government that really understands the North, and certainly with our northern members and myself as leader who's visited the north so many times, we will absolutely be able to deliver on the things that matter most to you. Instead of a premier that's working for his buddies, you can have a premier that works for you. That's our guarantee. Those are our commitments, and looking forward to hearing any questions that folks might have.
We'll ask journalists to line up at the mic for on-site questions. First question comes from Mathieu Simard from Radio Canada.
Hi, Andrea.
Hi, Mathieu.
You mentioned in your platform you want to support a university in Sudbury, but there's no timeline, no dollar figure. How quickly do you think you can make this happen?
Well, there's a couple of, sorry, there's lots of little bugs around here. Certainly our platform costing will be out very shortly, and that will help put some details around that. But I've spoken to the folks at Sudbury University. We know that a francophone, for francophones, by francophones, led with francophones is the way to go for Sudbury University. And it's shameful that we saw the current the past government, the most recent government, Doug Ford, simply walk away from the Laurentian University as it was falling apart at the seams. It went into CCAA, and we all know the result of that. Kids lost their courses. Lots of professors and other workers at the university lost their jobs. It didn't have to go down that way. It would have never gone down that way with an NDP government. And so we're also committed to making sure Laurentian is back on strong ground.
And Doug Ford has been campaigning a lot in Northern Ontario. He was in Timmins, Thunder Bay. Do you think he's coming after your ridings? Do you feel under attack here in Northern Ontario?
Not at all. I think Doug Ford's trying to discover the North for the first time. I know the North very, very well, and look forward to letting Northerners know that another government that's just going to disappoint them, that's going to make promises and walk away from those promises once they're elected. I think about broadband as another example. With the Doug Ford government, they were going to do all kinds of things to connect communities to broadband. They did nothing. We have a commitment in our platform to bring broadband to the North by 2025. But not just with the big corporate buddies, right, of Doug Ford's. Doug Ford, he's in it for his buddies and the big corporations that have most of the market when it comes to broadband. We know that there are lots of smaller providers throughout the North, and they need to be a part of the solution and a part of the service provision. That's what my MPP or my candidates have been advocating for when they were MPPs, and we're going to make sure that we build that into our plan for broadband.
Next question comes from Lisa Xing from CBC.
Hi there,
Lisa.
Andrea. Hi. Just on costing, you had mentioned you were going to wait until the budget came out to release some of the figures. So why haven't we seen any numbers yet?
Thanks for the question, Lisa. We're certainly committed to making sure that the costing of our platform is available to folks. We're doing that work. Already on the big ticket items, we've announced the costs for those things. So things like making sure that people's dental care, their prescription drugs, their mental health care are paid for so that they don't have to open their wallets to pay for those services. Things like our commitments to hiring more doctors and nurses and ensuring that people get the health care that they need and deserve. We've costed those things separately, but the entire platform will be costed, and you'll be getting those numbers soon.
And just looking ahead to the debate tomorrow, I just wanted to get a sense of your strategy going into it. This is the first time you'll be on the same stage as the other leaders. What's the strategy?
I'm just going to talk about what matters to people. Let's face it, this election, there's a lot at stake. There's just a lot at stake in this election, and people are telling me that what they want is a government that gets them and that's prepared to address the matters that they are most concerned about. The things that they know are broken, that COVID showed us were broken, but folks already, in some cases, knew were broken. Here in the North, of course, I've already touched on a couple of them. The Northlander needing to be addressed, the healthcare system that has never been up to par for Northerners, making sure that there's a strong economic viability here in Northern communities so that young people can and will stay. These are the things that people tell me they care about. These are the things that our candidates say that folks are concerned about. And so that's my focus. My focus isn't about Mr. Ford, Mr. Del Duca, or Mr. Schreiner. My focus is on the people of Ontario and letting them know that instead of going back and forth between Liberals and Conservatives and never having the things that matter most fixed, you can have a premier and a government that's going to pay attention to the things that matter most to you and ensure they get fixed.
Next question comes from Chris Rishowie from the Toronto Star.
Hi, Chris.
Hi there. Good morning. I see that you're promising a return of the midwifery program.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what that would look like? Would it return to Laurentian University, and would it be expanded given the demand?
Absolutely, we will expand the midwifery program and we will bring it back and expand it. And it's interesting because the International Day of Midwives just happened last week. And as I was talking to midwives in Scarborough, they were talking about midwives in Sudbury and the program that was cut. So we'll definitely bring it back. And you're right. There's just no doubt that midwifery is a way to provide prenatal care and birthing for women and people around our province. And it's not only a service that women want and that communities want to have more access to, but it's also a service where that we need to respect the providers. So I can also guarantee that we will not, unlike the Liberals and unlike the Conservatives, we will not be dragging midwives through the courts to fight against their pay equity. Their pay equity offerings that they should have been able to receive already. It's been years and years, and they've been fighting governments over and over. We're not going to do that.
And what specifically would you do for Laurentian University? Would you provide it with enough funding so that it could rehire all the profs who were laid off and reinstate the programs that were axed?
We absolutely want to see Laurentian back on solid ground, and that's going to take work with the university as well as with the community. What happened here was shameful. There's just no way that university should have been allowed to fall into that chaos that it did and end up in CCAA. So it takes a government that's concerned about post-secondary education, unlike the current government, or I guess I keep calling it current. It's not current. And it'll be past its stale date very, very soon. We know that post-secondary education is so important, and particularly here in Northern Ontario, every opportunity to have access to post-secondary education for Northern young people, as well as folks who are perhaps changing their careers, it's extremely important to the future and the hope of these communities in Northern Ontario. So absolutely, Laurentian is part of our plan, and we'll be working with local community as well as the university to do exactly that, get it back on solid ground and provide the courses and the quality of education that people here deserve.
Next question comes from Holly Mackenzie-Suter from the Canadian Press.
Hi, Holly.
Hi, Andrea. I've got questions about the kind of the health-related promises you're making.
Sure.
About the travel grant. Like, I'm wondering how, kind of what mechanism you're going to use to actually make this guarantee for the 14-day reimbursement, and would you also look at increasing the money that people can claim? As well as just kind of timelines for that and this hiring plan to make sure, it might be easier for people to not have to use the grant,
No, absolutely, and those are all good questions. I can tell you that the folks behind me that have served as MPPs, as well as the folks who are here from the Sudbury area and other parts of Northern Ontario, know very well where the holdups are and what the problems are. And what I've heard over and over again is there's just no commitment from governments in the past, conservative or liberal, to clean up the Northern Travel Grant process. And so it's both making sure that the claims that people are filing are processed quickly, that they're not they're not quibbled about, that there's an understanding of what Northerners face in terms of access to healthcare services. All of those things can be ironed out with a government that gives a darn. And we haven't had governments that give a darn about these problems for a very long time. We give a darn, and we will be cleaning that up. It's not rocket science. It's an insurance, almost like an insurance claim process, right? It's a reimbursement process. Why that's so hard? We'll certainly make sure that we clean that up. But you're absolutely right on the issue of the healthcare. The reason why we have so many people applying for the Northern Travel Grants is because they have to travel long distances just to get the health care that they need. That's not what lots of other parts of Ontario have to deal with or face. Just, pretty much Northerners face that challenge, and that's why we've made the commitments. I do want to say that the commitments around improving health care here and hiring more doctors and bringing more specialists and other healthcare workers to the north, it's something that I was pleased to see the Ontario Hospital Association acknowledge, the Ontario Medical Association acknowledged, the College of Physicians and Surgeons has acknowledged this as a problem. We've known it's been a problem for a very long time, and I was really happy to see the work that those organizations have done to help raise this up as an important issue to address.
Right, and so just making sure, so claim amount, like that would be something that you're looking at?
With the prices going up the way they are, with the lack of affordability that Northerners face every day. I mean, let's face it. Look at the price of gas right now. Look at the cost of living in the north when the winter seasons are so long. So the cost of heating, electricity, all of those things. It's much more expensive to live in the north. So anything we can do to make life more affordable for Northerners, we will be doing that.
Thanks. And just one more about the Globe story today that gave a little bit of a look at the Liberal platform, and they're saying that they're going to promise to balance the books by 2026. And a lot of, as I've asked you before about the similarities between your platform and there's a lot of crossover. So I'm wondering if you are going to set a date to balance the budget in your costed platform, and what that date will be.
Well, I can say I was at Queen's Park and watched as the Liberals focused on that last time, and we got hallway medicine, and we had thousands of nurses fired. We had hundreds of schools closed. We had a province where people couldn't get the things that they needed to build a good life. We're going to stay focused on making sure people can build a good life here. I'm going to stay focused on making sure that we don't increase the taxes of middle class and working class folks, or middle income and working income folks. Why? Because they just can't afford it anymore. So our plan is going to include making sure that those massive corporations that made all kinds of windfall profits during the pandemic are going to be able to or be asked to pay their fair share. And we're going to make sure that the multimillionaires in Ontario that can provide a little bit of help to make sure everyday families can afford to have a good life, can afford everyday life here in Ontario. We're going to make sure that they are paying a little bit more too.
Next question comes from Tyler Clark, Sudbury.com.
Hello, thanks for taking my question.
Hey, Tyler.
Hey, mine's about the opioid and homelessness crisis. I know the municipality is picking up some slack at the moment. They're poised to fund the medical staff for a supervised consumption site, as well as a transitional housing complex. First off, would the NDP commit to that, funding those medical staff, which is usually provincial jurisdiction? Further, what is the critical gap here in Northern Ontario that hasn't been addressed thus far?
Thanks so much for that question. It's absolutely tragic to see what's happening here in Sudbury and in northern communities from one part of the north to the next, one side of Northern Ontario to the other. I've talked to so many mayors, so many representatives from northern communities who are just beside themselves with what's happening with the opioid emergency, the opioid crisis. There's just no doubt that Doug Ford and his government spent 4 years pretending that there was no problem. They put a cap on the number of consumption sites. That was a shameful thing to do. They cut $330 million out of mental health and addictions funding. That was the wrong thing to do. As a result, people have lost their lives. Communities have suffered. Families have become heartbroken. And we've seen far too much tragedy as a result. So yes, our plan does include making sure that we're funding the services that people need. We will not have a cap on consumption and treatment sites. We will make sure that communities that are ready to start helping people to deal with their addictions, to deal with the poison drug supply, are getting the support of the provincial government. And yes, that means transitional beds funded. That means absolutely getting the detox facilities to be available, as well as the residential rehab beds. These are the things that we're missing in this province. For 4 years, we've seen an irresponsible government completely ignore the tragedies of the opioid crisis, and we're going to fix it.
And further, the critical mineral strategy, do you intend on applying that or bolstering it? What's your approach to that industry?
We've said for a long time that there are lots of opportunities to responsibly ensure that the minerals that are here in the north can be mined, so that not only does that create economic activity, but it also creates jobs. Not only do we want to see that, but we want to make sure that we're responsibly partnering with First Nations communities in the process to unlock those minerals. And we want to make sure that, speaking of process in another way, we want to make sure that there are good jobs that come from that, not just mining jobs, which are good jobs, but other processing opportunities. We've watched for too long. I mean, I've been in the north many times watching huge trucks with raw logs going across borders into other jurisdictions to be processed. We've seen mills and We've seen mills close in this province as those things have traveled to other jurisdictions. We know that there are opportunities, and I think that's the other thing that COVID showed us, is that we need to start taking seriously the opportunities that these gifts, the minerals, the forestry industry, that they can provide for people here in Ontario. And so that's always been something that we've been committed to, and we're going to continue to commit to making sure that we get some processing jobs here as well. And not all down south, some need to be in the north too.
Next question comes from Jonathan Mignot from CBC Sudbury.
Good morning, Andrea. As you know, the physician shortage has been a long-standing issue here in Northern Ontario. Can you just elaborate on your plans to recruit and hire 300 physicians? Because that's quite a big number. So how do you plan to do that?
It is a big number, but it's absolutely necessary, and that's why I did mention the College of Physicians and Surgeons, and I mentioned the Ontario Medical Association as organizations that have identified this concern as well. And so we'll be working with them for sure. But we also know that there are incentives that are necessary to attract those physicians here, to keep them here, to make sure that their spouses have opportunities here as well, to make sure that all of the things that folks want in terms of raising their family, good schools, good hospitals, great communities, these things need to be addressed as well. And it should not be left to the municipal order of government to do all that heavy lifting, because we all know that the capacity just isn't there.
And on a similar note, on high-speed internet, 2025 is not far away, just a few years. Can you talk about that and how you plan to expand access to high-speed internet in 3 years?
Thanks for that question. One of the most frustrating things that we've all seen for our northern folks, as well as myself, is a government that made all kinds of promises about broadband. In fact, I think it was at the plowing match, if I'm not mistaken. It was at the plowing match that shortly after the government got elected 4 years ago, that they made these huge promises and statements. Was it before or after?
It was before. It was then.
It was then?
It was then during the plowing match.
Anyways, they made all of these grandiose announcements and promises around broadband. What they didn't tell anybody is that they really weren't focusing on the north. They really weren't focusing on the kinds of communities that need it the most. And in fact, they weren't going to spend any of the money that they promised. That's where we are now. The previous government made very little to no progress on broadband. And the plans that they did put in place were engaging, as I mentioned before, the big fish, the big companies who really only want to service the bigger population bases. So it's been a failure. Doug Ford has failed on broadband because he fails to understand what northern communities need and what they're all about. And that's why we're saying we need to engage the smaller companies. That's one of the ways that we are going to make sure that we succeed in providing that broadband and providing it with the level of technology, the level of access that people deserve.
Next question comes from Mia Jensen from the Sudbury Star.
Hey, Mia.
Hi, Andrea. So I just saw in your plan here that you're promising to build 6,000 new affordable housing and 3,600 units of supportive housing in Northern Ontario. So obviously the lack of affordable housing is something that can drive out young professionals as much as a lack of jobs. So I'm just wondering, in a crisis that is affecting the entire province, other than these promises for units, how are you specifically targeting Northern Ontario when it comes to the affordable housing crisis?
Thanks for that important question. The housing unaffordability is really top of mind for young people. You're absolutely right. And it's heartbreaking to see young people who have done everything that they can to save up money for a down payment, for example, only to have the value of that down payment eroded over the last couple of years as prices have skyrocketed. And certainly that's a problem everywhere. You're absolutely right. It's all over Ontario now, where housing prices have really gone out of control. So we have a number of things for the private housing market, both in terms of buying a new home or your first time home purchase, as well as renters. On the purchase side, we are going to help with the down payment up to 10% of the value of the property. We will provide as a government as a shared equity loan, which won't gain interest and doesn't require any repayments until you sell the house. So helping with the down payment is one. Getting the speculators out is another thing that we're committed to doing. Making sure that vacant properties that are only being used as balance sheet items for big corporations, that taxes are raised on them, vacancy taxes are levied. We have a lot of plans to both cool off the market and stabilize the market, but also to help people to get into the market. Another big piece of our plan around housing is to make sure that we're spurring some of the missing middle type of housing, the kind of starter home type of housing, so that people can actually see their way into a market. Look, Doug Ford's plan is to build huge highways in southern Ontario to mansions that nobody can afford. We think we can be a lot more thoughtful and really help solve the problem. And we will also, just on the tenant side, we'll be bringing rent controls back to this province.
And my other question was about the Ring of Fire project, something you're promising to get moving with full transparency. And obviously there's been a recent takeover of Noront, which is a major company in the Ring of Fire project, by Wailu Company, which is an Australian company. And I'm just wondering what your plan is to work with Wailu on the project moving forward and trying to get some more transparency from a company that's going private and also is not Canadian owned.
Well, one of the things that we're committed to is making sure that First Nations communities, First Nations territories are being engaged in all of the decisions that are happening around the Ring of Fire. It's unfortunate, and in fact, it's not even unfortunate. It's an abdication of responsibility, of treaty responsibilities that the governments here in Ontario have long ignored their responsibility for government-to-government relationships, as well as prior and conformed consent when it comes to First Nations communities and things that are happening on their territories. We're gonna fix that. We will not be able to take advantage of what's there in the Ring of Fire in terms of minerals without full partnership with First Nations leadership, and that's a commitment that we've made for many, many, many years, and it's a commitment that we'll keep.
We'll move to questions on Zoom. First question comes from Julianne Cayouette from Le Voyageur.
Hi, Julianne.
Hi, thank you. You came to Sudbury last year to announce that the NPD government would support the transfer of the French programs from Laurentian to University of Sudbury. Is it still the case? Did you study that a bit more about the request for an Indigenous university?
We have really been committed all the way along to Francophone University here in Sudbury, but also to Francophones overall. We know that not only the language but the culture is extremely important, and that Francophones have unique needs. So not only will we be working to make sure that the Sudbury Francophone University is up and running for Francophones by Francophones with their leadership at the helm, and that we put some stable ground under Laurentian, but also that we bring the French Languages Services Commissioner back into Ontario to make sure that we have a watchdog in place that will identify the threats to Francophones, threats to their culture, threats to the services that Francophones should be able to get in French. These are things that we're committed to, and the way that we make sure that we're not sliding backwards, the way that we make sure that we're getting some progress, is to have that French Language Services Commissioner back in place.
Do you have a follow-up, Julia? You may need to unmute. We're having...
Yes, I do. Thanks. In the platform, you also said you would rebuild the trust in Laurentian University. That mistrust right now from the population is directed at the president. So what does that mean? Would you ask the board to fire him, or is there another way?
One of the challenges I think that we face right now with Laurentian is exactly that, the lack of trust. But in order to regain that trust, the government needs to be at the table, and they haven't been. The Ford government abdicated its responsibilities, and it was shocking to see a northern minister, in fact, from Sault Ste. Marie, folks might remember, who just turned his back and walked away from getting engaged or involved in any way. You know, we've been through 4 years of a government that does not prioritize post-secondary education. We're the opposite. We know how important post-secondary education is. We know how important it is to make sure that it's accessible in communities like this, as well as other northern communities. We know what it does, not only in terms of economic stimulation, but in terms of access and hope and affordability for local community members, young people particularly. So everything that we need to do to make sure that we can rebuild that university and the trust with the public, most importantly, we will be doing. We won't walk away. We see it as our responsibility and our obligation.
Next question comes from Pascal Vachon from TFO. Hi, Pascal.
My question is about University of Sudbury. Back in October, you said that you would transfer the French program from Laurentian to University of Sudbury. But today in your platform, you're not saying that. You're just saying that you will support University of Sudbury. So I'm wondering, why did you change your mind, or is it still in the plans to transfer?
Yeah, not at all. There hasn't been a change of mind at all. Whoever drafted the platform maybe didn't have the exact same language as I said at the microphone at that media event. But our commitment is solid and it's unwavering. We are going to do what we need to do. And in fact, I have had conversations with the Sudbury University, and they have what they need to get up and running, except a government that's going to be prepared to make it happen. And what I'm committing to is we'll be that government.
All right. And the federal government gave them $2 million, I think, last week. So I'm wondering, on your side, would you be ready to give them, I don't know, if they ask for money to start and really start their university, would you be ready to give money? Absolutely. And then what form would that take?
Absolutely. You know, I don't know exactly what the ask will be, but what I can guarantee is we will be a partner with the Sudbury University to get it up and running. We've made that commitment. We're solid in that commitment. I know that the MPPs here in Sudbury, I just did what you did. The candidates here in Sudbury who have served as MPPs already are committed to doing exactly that, and so we will be doing exactly that.
Seeing no further questions, I'll turn it back to you, Andrea.
Thanks, everybody. It's great to be here in Sudbury. I have to say that if one thing is for sure, the other thing that happened with COVID is I didn't get a chance to come up to the north as often as I was hoping to do, but it's great to be here right now. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your commitment, candidates, and looking forward to making sure that Ontarians can have a government that works for them, that's working for them each and every day, as opposed to a government that we know was led by a premier that worked for his buddies. Thanks, everyone.